师父吉祥。
Auspicious greetings, ladies and gentlemen and bodhisattvas. Please have a seat.
阿弥陀佛。
Dear Venerable Miao Mu and our Blear executives, ladies and gentlemen, aspiring bodhisattvas, I would like to thank you for coming tonight, despite your privilege of enjoying a long, leisurely, free weekend. You have come here to find Guanyin. So for this, I thank you and I commend you for that, because again, you probably have chosen a rather different path to true happiness. So I would say good choice, for my sake and for Guangshan's sake as well, and for your sake. And it's been about 2 years since I last came to deliver a talk. Right? 2 years has been quite long, and so technically when we meet here, right, I would say that although in the past 2 years when I haven't seen you here, we have been meeting everywhere, right, in different parts of the world. So technically, as I sit here, I'm not really anywhere, just like every one of you, right? We connect by Dharma and we connect by spirit. So that's why it allows us to remain connected no matter where we are and no matter what we're doing. And so that is why I have chosen tonight's topic out of this year's series on different Buddhist sutras. So my choice was the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara's Universal Gate chapter. I chose it to support what I have just said about universal connection and the omnipresence of us in each and every one of you. And therefore, I would like to also then begin by asking, which is the sutra that you have chanted most often when you come to the Buddhist temples for Sunday chanting services? 各位最常诵的这个经啊，好，我们礼拜天这个共修法会，最常诵的是哪一部？普门品 Anything else? Amitabha Buddha, 金刚经 right? And so we chant many of these sutras. Okay? And I would also like to say I chose this because this is the first ever sutra that I put my hands on when my mother took me to a temple at age 8. She says, just come, you're going to meet someone who will bless you and make sure you do well in school. Okay? 你跟着我去佛堂就对了。好，你只要认真拜佛呢，有个菩萨会保佑你，好，让你头脑变好，人缘变好。Okay, that's what she said to me. Okay. But my first experience didn't turn out so well when I first came across the Universal Gate chapter, because I had no idea what it was about, except there was a lot of fire, a lot of water, right? A lot of bandits, right? And a lot of calamities awaiting Avalokiteshvara to deliver us. But this monastic who realized or recognized my confusion with a Buddhist text that I wasn't able to understand came and told me, it's okay if you don't understand what you're chanting. Why? Because another purpose of chanting a sutra is actually to connect with the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. 诵经拜佛就是与佛结心, right? When you connect heart to heart, you are able to bring yourself to a state when you transcend word and concept to get to where the bodhisattvas really are. That is, to discover your inner pure self. Okay, so that made me feel better for chanting a bunch of words I could not understand. Okay, so I appreciated the fact that this monastic explained the purpose of chanting to me. Right? First of all, to connect with the Buddhas and the bodhisattvas. And second, to really discover our Buddha nature. Okay. But as I grew up, I also began to search the deeper purpose of chanting the sutra. So I wondered if you have wondered about the same thing. Have you discovered your purpose of chanting the sutras? Okay. Some would say, first of all, it actually gives us merits and blessings. Right? 我们诵经的功德 可以回向给自己，回向给家人。And so the beautiful sounds of the sutras allows us to gain some kind of merit through the purification of words and mind and the body. And at the same time, you will see it's okay to not understand what you're reading for the first time, because you're going to read it again and then again and then again, for the third time, for the fourth time, till the 100th time, until the magic happens. Right? Suddenly, one day, you eventually understand what you're reading. Right? 藏经看不懂怎么办？好，师父跟我们讲，就是继续看，随便看，乱看。Okay? Yeah. So it worked for me. I hope it worked for you. Right? The more you read it, the more the words come to you. So it does deepen your understanding of the sutra when you chant it. Okay? And thirdly, you might see once you understand it, it actually brings you to some certain new levels. You begin to practice this Dharma in your daily life. You begin to change personally on some kind of spiritual level to see that, yes, I am actually facing life differently. Right? I'm actually starting to see a different self. Okay? And so as I follow these three basic steps, from just becoming friends with it, and then receiving the merits and the blessings from the sutra, and then really putting the words into practice, I came to like and love Universal Gate Chapter. Okay? It's actually much more than the story. It's much more than the bandits, the fires, right? The prayers and the liberation. It really comes down to who we are. Okay? So my topic today, coming face to face with Guanyin Bodhisattva, right? The first purpose is to get you to come face to face with what Universal Gate Chapter is talking about. Okay? And secondly, I would like you to really come face to face with your inner Guanyin. It's all there. It's all there in the sutras. Okay? And so that's why I've chosen the Universal Gate Chapter. Okay? But before I go on, I thought it would be nice to give everybody a walkthrough of the Universal Gate Chapter. Okay? To first know the background of this content, what the teaching's about, the heroes or the heroines involved in the sutra. And then we can go on to discuss deeper into who Guanyin Bodhisattva on appearance is and in reality is. Okay? And so I'm sure you'll understand that the Pu Menping or the Universal Gate Chapter is not a sutra itself, is it? 它是一部经吗? No, right? If it's not, then what is it? It's part of the Lotus Sutra. Right? It's part of this 30-something chapter Lotus Sutra that teaches us something amazing. And the amazing thing is all included in the name itself, Miao Fa Lian Hua Jing. Okay? So the Universal Gate is actually chapter 25 of Miao Fa Lian Hua Jing, Lotus Flower of the Wondrous Dharma. Okay? And we see this in a very interesting way because we understand that lotus itself represents a flower that blooms and grows through mud, untainted, right? But at the same time, there's another thing about the lotus which we may have not noticed. Okay? For a regular seed to bear fruit, it usually goes like this. You plant the seed, it grows into a plant, right? It flowers, and then it bears fruit. Right? But the lotus flower doesn't do that. The moment it blooms, it also bears fruit. So you seldom see any plant that does both things at the same time. Therefore, the symbol of the lotus flower becomes chosen by Buddhists to symbolize a very, very wonderful theory. That is, the moment you connect with the Buddha, you also become the Buddha. Right? The connection with the Buddha becomes the cause, the seed of your Buddha. And then, at the same time, the fruit of your Buddhahood becomes present at the same time. And so in the lotus flower, we talk about this existence of the 10 realms. Right? We want to say that as ordinary beings, when we accumulate enough good karma, we become reborn in the higher realms, in the 4 noble worlds. But unfortunately, if we don't do well, we fall lower. Right? We fall lower into the realms of hungry ghosts, animals, or maybe asuras. And so the concept goes like this. We learn the Dharma, we practice well, we have attainments, and then we become the Buddha. Right? We depart the realms of ordinary beings. Okay? However, to instill the wonderful idea of the lotus flower, that seed and the fruit grow together concurrently, turns this chart into a circle. It's no longer an up or down situation. Right? It tells us that actually, if you read the Lotus the Lotus Sutra carefully, you will see that we go from the realms of the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, right? The enlightened beings, to Pratyeka Buddhas, what we call the lone Buddhas. Okay? 辟支佛, 独觉, right? Lone Buddhas who are able to attain enlightenment on their own without hearing the Dharma. Right? They see through absolute insight, so that's why they're called conditional awakeners. But Sravakas, on the other hand, are the ones who listen to the Dharma and find their way to transcend the Four Noble Truths. Okay, so Sravakas are the ones who have gone beyond suffering, its cause, its end, and its path. While the Pratyeka Buddha says, okay, I now understand why I come to the cycle of rebirth, starting from ignorance, volition, consciousness, sensory organs, all the way into existence, and then you have clinging, attachment, right? Perception, and then to the idea that yes, you exist, and eventually you die. But Pratyeka Buddhas realize that once you sever ignorance, you sever the cycle of rebirth, so there's no more coming back. Okay? And so together we will see on these levels the four on top are what we call the noble realms, who are enlightened beings. And we usually separate enlightened beings from non-enlightened beings. For example, us, the human beings, right? And the heavenly gods and the asuras on your left, ones who are really angry, who are always fighting, to the ones who have transcended their physical restrictions. Okay? To these beings, we are still the beings of desire. And worse, if we don't do well, right? The cycle of rebirth tells us that we may one day become reborn as a dog, as a bird, as a worm, right? Or even into the realms of hell or hungry ghosts. Okay? But the beauty of the lotus flower then tells us that no matter where you are, you have to understand one common thing about all 10. That is, it all comes from the heart, right? So when it all comes from the heart, you realize that if you work on the heart, you are able to transcend all of them. And so the beauty of the lotus flower, once again, is for us to see that the cause for enlightenment and the fruit of enlightenment should exist concurrently as one. So when you're a Buddha, you are also an animal, right? You feel for an animal. When you're a Buddha, you feel for a human being. But at the same time, when you're an animal or a human being, you also contain or possess that nature of the Buddha, the kindness, the compassion, the courage, and so on. So one is all, and all is one. Therefore, embodied in the very name, Miao Fa, Lian Hua Jing, the lotus flower of the wondrous Dharma. So we are all lotus flowers. But that's not the full title. If we go further, we will see that Pu Men Ping in full is Miao Fa Lian Hua Jing, Guan Shi Yin, Pusa, Pu Men Ping. Okay. And therefore, going into this Universal Gate chapter, it tells by itself, it's a giveaway, who is the hero of this chapter? Avalokiteshvara, right? The one who observes the sounds and the voices of the world to reach out to you. And by Bodhisattva, as explained, an enlightened sentient being whose heart is big enough to make sure that you are also delivered as a part of his own deliverance. Right? Your happiness is my happiness. Your suffering is my suffering. Right? So I can't be happy when you're suffering. Okay? That's the amazing spirit of an enlightened sentient being. Therefore, Bodhisattva. And what does universal gate mean? Right? Guanyin Bodhisattva has this amazing ability to be very creative in his way to deliver all living beings, right? And so he opens up in all directions. He listens to all directions and makes sure that as long as you need his help, as long as you're a sentient being, Guanyin Bodhisattva will never leave you behind. Right? So anyone can walk through that door no matter where you are, no matter who you are, or no matter what you are. Therefore, universal gate. And then finally, the word chapter shows us that it's probably a very important part of the entire sutra. Right? It's important in quite a few ways that I will explain. But now, understanding the sutra, I want to give you the Lotus Sutra in a nutshell. Okay? Sorry, the Universal Gate chapter. Okay? Do you remember how the Universal Gate chapter begins? 尔时无尽意菩萨即从坐起，偏袒右肩，合掌向佛而作誓言：世尊，以何因缘观世音名观世音？ Right. So, how did the chapter begin? It began with a question. Right? Don't you just love questions? Right? Questions are your first step to enlightenment. But when questions being ignorance, it again fits the perfect paradigm of ignorance means enlightenment. Right? No question, no answer. No ignorance, no enlightenment. Therefore, cause and effect fall in the same place. And so it begins in a nutshell with the question by an interesting bodhisattva who continues from the previous chapters of the Lotus Flower Sutra. Okay? And so it began with a timely Q&A by Wu Jingyi Pusa, Akshayamati Bodhisattva, infinite intention. Okay? Then again, question: have you wondered why it began with Wu Jingyi Pusa? Who is this person, and why? Okay. And why have I jumped directly to chapter 25 instead of beginning with chapter 1 of the Lotus Sutra? Okay. These are all worth pondering over. But if you go into the Universal Gate chapter, you will discover that as Buddha answers this question, why is Avalokiteshvara called Avalokiteshvara? Right? It becomes a very beautiful elaboration of this wonderful bodhisattva who demonstrate the spirit of Mahakaruna, unconditional loving kindness. And expedient means. Right? Not only does he have the kindness to save somebody, he also is very good at doing that. Okay? So we hear many theories about liberation, but we will often wonder, how exactly do we put it into action? So Universal Gate chapter is all about the action. It's all about the really wonderful and the smart actions demonstrated by Avalokiteshvara. Okay? And then we would discover the very beautiful literary part of the Lotus Sutra translated into Chinese by Kumarajava. That is, and towards the end of the Q&A, we see a repetition of the whole thing. Right? So it's like going to class, you ask a question, the teacher answers the question, and it says, did you get what I mean? Okay, if you don't, I'm going to repeat it in a nutshell. And therefore, the repetition of the Q&A shown in the style of a verse becomes the reaffirmation of what you have heard. So question, you hear it, you affirm what you have heard, and then the next question is, do you believe what you have heard? Okay. If you believe it, then that's where the merit comes from. Okay. So yes, you don't have to understand it, you just need to believe in it, then merit arises. Okay. But all along, I would just like to say that when we look at this chapter in a nutshell, it's a very wonderful procedure for your learning, your practice, and your realization of the Dharma. Okay. So again, you question, you hear the answer, you repeat the answer, right? And then you give rise to belief in that answer before you put it into action. Okay, so that's Pumenping. That's what we chant almost every week, every night, without understanding. Right? So if you don't understand it, it's okay. You know, we've all been there. Right? But once you understand it, you can start to be your Guanyin. Okay? But most importantly, what we see at the end is the fact that it's not a praise about Guanyin after all. It's not an exploration of how we should find deliverance, but rather in the end you will see the intention of Guanyin Bodhisattva is, through the universal gate, is to deliver what we call true nirvana. Okay? And therefore the beauty of this chapter falls in the fact that it's one of the 4 most important chapters of the Lotus Sutra. The first one on expedient means, in the Lotus Sutra, 方便品, it begins with you giving rise to vows to want to do something. Hey, I want to achieve a goal, right? And then you head on to 受量品. That is your way of existence, the purpose of your entire existence based on the vow to do something meaningful. Okay? And then the third most important chapter of the Lotus Sutra is actually 菩提品, the one on Bodhi mind. Right? So going from 方便品, your method, 受量品, the purpose of your existence, to 菩提品, the ultimate goal of your existence, that is to help yourself and others. Finally, the most important part, 普门品, that is about true nirvana. Okay? 所以从发心到方便, 对不对? 到方法, 一直到所有的这个都是涅槃. And therefore, Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara gives us a whole new definition about nirvana. That is, it's no longer just ultimate or tranquil peace for the self, but it's actually about universal deliverance. Okay? So I've always loved the spirit of the Bodhisattvas because they treat everyone as if they were their own. So this is a verse by John Whittier. He says, "He findeth not who seeks his own. A soul is lost that is saved alone." So Guanyin Bodhisattva technically is a Buddha. Right? Legend has it that he is already at the level of a Buddha. But why has he remained a Bodhisattva? So you think of it as a rank, right? If you can be a general, why would you remain as a lieutenant? Right? And so in Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara's mind is that if I go up too high, I may not feel for your pain. Right? So that's why I'm going to remain a sentient being so that I understand what pain is. I feel for your afflictions. So it's like when you talk to a child, right? You talk in a very different way, right? In Chinese, you repeat the words, right? 弟弟要吃饭饭吗？要睡睡吗？ Right? And so you understand that that's how a toddler understands your language, right? But when you turn to your husband or your wife, you wouldn't say 你要吃饭饭吗? Right? Your husband or wife would think, what is wrong with you, right? 你要吃饭吗? Right? So in spirit, it's the same, but methods becomes changed because Guanyin Bodhisattva feels for your need. Right? In order to help other people, we must first feel for their need. And so I think in a nutshell, we can already see the beauty of Universal Gateway chapter. Okay. So before we go into the Universal Gateway chapter, a quick question. Who is Avalokiteshvara? You could say he is the successor of Amitabha Buddha, because if you look at the Western Pure Land Triad, 西方三圣, you will see standing in the middle Amitabha, right? 阿弥陀佛站中间, 然后观世音菩萨站左边, 好，大势至菩萨站右边. Therefore, with Avalokiteshvara and 大势至 Bodhisattva, they become the attendants or the supporters of Amitabha Buddha. Okay? But there's more than that, right? Avalokiteshvara appears in several different Buddhist sutras, again, to symbolize the very core of prajna paramita, right? 般若, 或是 perfection of wisdom. Okay? But before we go into that, let's look at this word etymologically. So Avalokiteshvara is a Sanskrit word that becomes broken down into Ava, Lokita, Ishvara, right? And it's combined into one compound word by the grammatic rule of the Sanskrit language. And so you will see the part where Lokita meets Ishvara. In the Sanskrit rule, when A meets I, it transforms into E. So that's why when you combine it, instead of saying Avalokiteshvara, it becomes what? Avalokiteshvara. Okay. So just a little Sanskrit game for everyone. But to break it down, you will see Ava actually means down, from high above, right? So 观世音我从高处往下看, right? You're looking at somebody who gazes down upon you, right? So what kind of beings would gaze down upon you? Right? Not dogs, not children, but usually Buddhas or adults, beings who are on a higher level than you, right? And so you can already see that this is why we call him Arya Avalokiteshvara, 圣观世音, 圣观自在, because he's from high above. And from high above, he gazes down into the Lokita. Lokita has two meanings, 世间, the realm that we live in, or a place, or to observe. And so given the active sense of an occasionally irregular Sanskrit grammar would become Avalokita, someone who looks down from above into the world. Okay? And then what about the last word, Ishvara? Ishvara technically means Lord, right? When you are the Lord, when you are the owner of yourself, right? You are in control. But Ishvara has a greater sense. It can actually mean flexibility or mastery. So 自在, 自在. Sometimes Venerable Master Hsing Yun explains 自在 as 观自在就是什么? 观照自己在不在, right? Are you there? Right? Are you there? If you're there, then you are Ishvara. Okay? But it also means self-mastery in the fact that when we look at the Heart Sutra, the first thing Avalokiteshvara comes to realize is that the self is made up of the five skandhas, right? Form, perception, volition, mental formation, and consciousness. 色, 受, 想, 行, 识. And these are just conglomerates of conditions. And once they fall apart, they disappear. So in that sense, having that perfect understanding of the self, you realize that you will not become the slave to that self. Instead, you become the master to that self, so you have perfect insight and control. That's what we mean by 自在. Okay, so 圣观自在, 圣观世音. Okay. Then why do we have two names? Okay. First, you will see 观世音 is translated from Sanskrit into Chinese by Kumarajava, 鸠摩罗什, based on the Universal Gate chapter. On that very concept, watching down on the world from above. And so, 观世音. Okay? But in another case, Avalokiteshvara has been translated into Chinese as 观自在 by 玄奘大师. Right? But that's based on the Heart Sutra, the core of the Prajna Paramita Sutra, 大般若经, 浓缩成260个字的心经. Right? And so, by 观自在, what 玄奘, the master wants to highlight is the fact that Guanyin Bodhisattva not only has compassion, he's also very well attained in terms of compassion. Okay? And so that's the reason we have two. So which one is right? Both of them are right, depending on how you want to meet Avalokiteshvara. Okay? Then the third case, why do we have Guanyin? Right? We understand that it's a Chinese tradition to make sure that your name does not overlap with that of the ruler, otherwise you lose your head, 你就掉脑袋了，对不对？所以为了避讳, so even people wonder if they would get 观世音 into trouble. Yeah, so if I call your name 观世音, would it repeat the name of the emperor Li Shiming? Right? So in order to make sure Avalokiteshvara doesn't get into trouble, they would say, hey, let's remove that word. Right? So that becomes 观世音, 观世音, 观音, 观音. Right? Guanyin菩萨, 观世音菩萨, they are all technically the same. Okay? But don't worry if you chant Guanyin Bodhisattva's name differently. What matters is actually in your mind. Okay, so it's the same thing to when you refer to your family as dear or darling, 对不对？亲爱的, right? Your husband or wife wouldn't get angry at you and say, 你怎么可以叫我亲爱的？你应该要叫我的名字啊 right? 这样才是真正的我啊，否则我怎么知道你在叫我？对不对？亲爱的，你到底在叫谁？好，或是孩子 ，it's all the same thing. So you might imagine when you refer to your husband and wife as darling or dear, right? It's your nickname. It's your special connection with that person. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether you chant Guanyin菩萨or Guanyin菩萨, as long as you know clearly that you're calling out to this Bodhisattva, right? Then you will be fine. Okay, so a short introduction of Avalokiteshvara. We're now going to go into the Universal Gate chapter. Okay, so do you all have a handout in your hand? Okay. We have taken the liberty of printing the English version of the Universal Gate chapter to make sure that you are able to follow what we're going through. Okay? And so let's look at this Avalokiteshvara's Universal Gate chapter. Okay? So it begins like this. At that time, Akshayamati Bodhisattva rose from his seat, bared his right shoulder, put his palms together facing the Buddha, and said, "World-honored one, for what reason is Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva named observing the sounds of the world?" Okay? So just this opening alone is enough for us to take a whole week. Right? It embodies many, many different meanings. Okay? But I won't hold you here for a whole week. I need to go home on Monday, otherwise my boss will sack me. Yeah. So I will just keep it short. Okay? But in this opening, we can already see the important message of a bodhisattva who follows the Mahayana path, right? And so we refer to Akshayamati, Wu Jingyi Pusa, as the key interlocutor. In Chinese, we mean Dang Ji Zhong, right? In every sutra, you have an interlocutor who opens up the discussion, right? But you don't just find anyone to open up that question. That person has to be very related, right? And so that's why in the Vimalakirti Sutra, the interlocutor is actually Sariputra, to symbolize the transformation from the Theravada, the smaller vehicle, to Mahayana, the greater vehicle. And so in this case, why has Wu Jingyi or Akshayamati become the interlocutor? Okay, we can see from a few perspectives. First of all, as said before, the Universal Gate is actually chapter 25, right? And usually every chapter of a sutra is connected to one another. Therefore, this would make you wonder what was actually discussed in chapter 24. Right? It has to be related, right? So in chapter 24, it was actually about another attendant of this particular bodhisattva, Samantabhadra, Pu Xian Ru Lai. So in chapter 23, it turns out that it's a discussion on a bodhisattva called Great Voice or Wonderful Voice, Miao Guang. And the bodhisattva Wonderful Voice started this whole discussion about how he vows to deliver all living beings universally. So it doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what you are, Miao Guang's vow is to deliver everyone based on the very story of Samantabhadra. Right? Pu Xian Shi Yun Ping is something you might have heard already. You will hear soon when Venerable Huiren comes in a few months. Right? But the story goes like this. Samantabhadra in Pu Xian Shi Yun Ping from the Avatamsaka Sutra says to the Buddha, "I'm going to make 10 vows. And these 10 vows will show how I am going to help every single living being universally." Right? So what are the 10 vows? The first one, 礼敬诸佛, to respect all Buddhas, right? And second, 称赞如来, to praise the Tathagatas. And thirdly, 广修供养, to broadly develop or make offerings. Okay? So if you look at the first three, what's going on? Samantabhadra's practice is already about the refinement of our mental, verbal, and physical karma, isn't it? 一切的修行都是三业清净。那包括普贤菩萨的10大愿，他也在先净化他的3业。Okay, so you begin with the purification of the first 3 by doing something good, right? So in other words, do good deeds, think good words, speak good words, and think good thoughts. 做好事，说好话，存好心， right? A nice symbol of his first 3 vows. And number 4, to repent one's wrongdoing. Okay, 忏悔业障。 So once you learn to do something, the fourth thing you do is you repent your wrongdoing. So in a way, you are purifying your three karmas, your verbal, physical, and mental. And then once you're able to identify the three, purify them, what happens? You rejoice in all forms of goodness. 随喜功德. So you might discover when your body and your mind is in a very pleasant state, everything you see will be pleasant, right? Everything other people are doing will also be pleasant. And so that's why you will see from 1 to 5, what Samantabhadra is teaching us is to help others. First, we can learn how to help ourselves. And the way to help ourselves is the continual refinement of our physical, mental, and verbal deeds, right? Anything you express yourself, by purification, it means we start to do so in a more positive way, a way that is comfortable and encouraging for others, right? But it doesn't end there. Samantabhadra goes on to say, okay, once I am prepared, right? Once I prepare myself to help others by making sure that I am in a good condition, what's number 6? To request the turning of the Dharma wheel. 请转法轮. Right? I'm ready, right? I can already build a school, so I'm going to say, hey, I want to share the Dharma. That would be my first wish when I am in a good condition. So when I enjoy life, I hope that everyone will enjoy life with me. Okay? And then number 7, to request the Buddha's presence in the world. 请佛住世. Right? If I want to open up a school, I have to invite the teacher. Right? Hey, Buddha, stay. Don't enter nirvana. Because if you enter nirvana, we're not able to communicate with you. Because once you're in nirvana, you shut down all your conceptual functions. You shut down your language function. Once you shut them down, you won't be able to teach us the way we need you to. Right? So that's why the Buddha needs to remain in this world in his transformation and reward body to make sure that we understand his wisdom. So this is number 7. So far, so good? Okay. So number 8, what happens when you open up a school and invite a teacher to the school? 第8个, 常随佛学, to always follow and learn from the Buddha. Which means that you have to look after this teacher, right? And be sure that the teacher is ready and prepared to start teaching. Then stay by his side. 这个就叫常随佛学. Okay? And what happens when you decide to learn from him? 第9个, 恒顺众生, to oblige all sentient beings. In the presence of a good teacher who's virtuous and meritorious, what you learn from him is his amazing quality to look after people and to help sentient beings. So that's what we mean by oblige all sentient beings, right? So I might ask you to remember the last time when you made a request to Venerable Miao Mu, and that she actually said no. 妙木法师有跟我们说过 no 吗？可能没有哦。对，因为我们这位大菩萨呢，真的是恒顺大家，希望大家在这里可以好好学佛。And so in the presence of our teacher, yes, we learn to oblige all living beings. And then finally, when you're ready, right, the Dharma is everywhere. That means when Dharma is everywhere, we can learn to become better everywhere. 最后一个是什么？普皆回向。Okay. So in chapter 24, although it doesn't really mention these 10 vows clearly, but when Miao Guang Pusa, wondrous voice, talks about how, yes, I want to do this so that I can deliver every sentient being. Right? Samantabhadra says, yes, very good. But in order to make this happen, we have to ask the Buddha how it can happen. Right? 既然决定要做，就要请示，要请法，知道怎么做。So Samantabhadra turns to Akshayamati. 好，普贤菩萨就跟他的侍者啊，无尽意菩萨说：“你呢，到世间去，好，帮我们呢，对佛祖提出这个问题。So I appraise you for this wonderful vow. So I'm going to ask you to represent me. Go down to the human realm and raise the question to Sakyamuni Buddha. So Sakyamuni Buddha has an opportunity to teach it to all the sentient beings in his world. Okay, so that's why we have 无尽意菩萨. Okay. He isn't just a passerby, right? He isn't just anyone, but Akshayamati becomes the important key hero of Universal Gate chapter, 无尽意菩萨. Okay. And so having said all of this, you will see why the sutra begins with at that time. 时, what time? Evening? Breakfast? Dinner? No, at a perfect time, right? That. is a pronoun for perfect timing. So by perfect timing, we say, first of all, he says, raising the question right after chapter 24. Wonderful voice is omnipresence, right? His infinite manifestations and universal salvation. So we have heard of this person who wants to do this. So now it's a perfect timing for Akshayamati to raise the question. It's a perfect timing because we are ready, right? 我们已经认识了什么叫做 universal deliverance. We understand what it means, therefore we are now ready to engage on the action. So in a way, we can see chapter 24 is actually a sister chapter on universal liberation. Okay? 普门, 普贤, 普度一切众生. And so conditions are therefore right for us to hear it. Okay? So just the word 耳识 at that time alone is enough to make us think about where are we now? Have I learned enough? Or have I prepared myself enough to become Guanyin or to realize who Guanyin is? Okay? And what happens next is the next action by Akshayamati. He rose from his seat, right? 即从坐起. Okay? But the seat is a symbol of the Bodhisattva's foundation of enlightenment. Right? When I sit on this chair is supporting me as a speaker. And so when Akshayamati rises from his seat is the foundation of prajna paramita, which is emptiness. Right? And so again, why does he rise from emptiness? He has to depart from the higher realm into the human realm for us to speak in the same frequency. So rising from emptiness, stepping into existence. 从空离开，进入有的世界. In order to speak to living beings who think based on the concepts of existence. 我们都是有的众生，所以讲空的人呢，跟我们讲，我们是听不懂的。所以菩萨有这样的一个慈悲，离开他已经证得的境界，再回到我们的境界。Okay, so therefore we come back to that frequency. 这个就是即从做起。Okay, very interesting, but a very compassionate gesture. Right? So next time, would you be willing to raise or depart from your comfort place, right? And then return to a place where living beings are suffering or experiencing pain in order for you to remain aware. What's the next thing? Bared his right shoulder. 偏袒右肩. Okay? And so again, why is one shoulder exposed and the other covered? Right? We understand the Dharma in two ways. Right? One way is we understand the conventional Dharma, the exposed Dharma that you can see and understand. Okay? What is the exposed Dharma for you now? 什么叫做显? Words written down, right? Speaker speaking in your language, and also in concepts that you can already understand. These are the exposed provisional truth, right? The visible ones, which is wisdom. And therefore, on the other side will be his covered shoulder, right? 偏袒右肩, when you bare your right shoulder, right? In reality, you would see Theravada monks baring their right shoulder so that when they do things, when they work, it will be more convenient, right? But to cover their left shoulder will be a way to show their respect to the Buddha. But at the same time, by covering, it means what? The invisible Dharma, that is the ultimate truth. The ultimate truth that is beyond language, beyond concepts. Only something which you can attain when you're in deep meditative concentration. 你要进入甚深三昧，才能够感受到佛的智慧的时候呢，那个就是我们所谓的 ultimate。圣义谛. So if you have read the Avalokitesvara Sutra, remember the question, what exactly is 不二法门, non-duality gate? What was Avalokitesvara's answer? He went like this. He stayed quiet. Right? His silence was a reflection of ultimate Dharma. But I wonder how many of us understand that. Right? How many of us understood what Shan is when Buddha picked up a flower and smiled, right? If we could all do that, this Dharma talk would be so easy, right? Yeah. Let's do it the Buddha way. We're going to have 2 hours of silence in deep meditative concentration. Let's begin now. Yeah. I don't think I'll get to come back next year. Yeah. So provisional sometimes it's fun, right? Expose our words and thoughts so we understand each other better. 好，集同坐起，偏袒右肩。最后一个是什么 ？Last one， 合掌向佛。And so by joining his palms, he joins all 10 fingers, right? To reflect our teaching, our discussion of the 10 realms in the fact that Buddha, Bodhisattva, Sravaka, Pratyeka Buddha, human beings, Asura, animals, hungry ghosts, they are all within that one mind. For you to realize that in order to understand the Buddha's mind, you have to treat all living beings as equals. Okay? 我们都是平等的，和十法界于一心 to reflect the unity between ordinary beings and Buddha. 佛凡圣不二. And so just this simple action, right, we'll see why Akshayamati, because he realizes with his infinite intention that there are infinite beings, right? 众生无边. And 众生无边，众生在造的业呢也是无边的. Therefore, they also create infinite karma. So having realized the daunting task of having to deliver every being, Akshayamati, I have infinite kindness intentions and say, yes, I want to do this. So Buddha, show us how. Show us how, tell us the way to do it. Right? So this very beautiful opening in just a few short sentences already explains a lot about the spirit of the Mahayana and a true Bodhisattva. Okay, so perfect presentation by Akshayamati, Wujingyi Pusa. Okay. And then let's look at the second paragraph of Universal Gate. The Buddha answered Akshayamati Bodhisattva. Good man, if there be countless hundreds of millions of billions of living beings, experiencing all manner of suffering, who bear of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, and call his name with single-minded effort, then Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva will instantly observe the sound of their cries, and they will be liberated. Okay. So we can treat this as a one-line answer. Okay. It's the entire Universal Gate chapter in a nutshell. Right? If you want to explain what Pumenping is about, this will be the paragraph that you can use when you answer the questions. Okay, so this is what we read. Okay. But you would say, yes, 善男子, okay, good man, right? 若有无量百千万亿众生受诸苦恼，闻是观世音菩萨，一心称名，观世音菩萨即时观其音声，即得解脱. Okay. So the outline of the Universal Gate can be picked out in the 3 points that you see in this paragraph. One of the most important practice of the Universal Gate chapter is what? 观其音声，闻是观世音菩萨. So the first key is, have you heard of Avalokiteshvara? Okay. And when you hear of Avalokiteshvara, are you willing to believe in him? 你相信你的老师吗? Okay. And once you believe, you don't just depend on the power, your faculty, the power of hearing, right? Hearing is always the first step into learning the Dharma. But what happens is, the next thing you have to express your dedication and belief. So that's why the second most important key to universal deliverance in the Gate, Universal Gate chapter is number 2. You hear his name, what happens? You also call his name with single-minded effort. Right? So you can't just say, oh, in your mind, yes, I believe that I will be liberated. You have to say it out loud for a couple of reasons. Right? First of all, we go from the power of hearing, 闻是观世音菩萨. You go into the power of invocation. 称念，那个念的力量是非常强力的。所以为什么学佛很多的修行法门都是不断的念出来，对不对？忏悔也是要讲出来，发愿也是要讲出来，念佛也是要讲出来。So everything has to be voiced to make sure that when you say it out loud, the idea is that what you think inside needs to be voiced in order for your ears to hear your sound, and then those words will be able to register in your mind clearly, right? So that's why in a wedding you will say, do you take this man in sickness and in health, right? You can't just nod your head, right? You have to say what? I do, right? You have to say it out loud, otherwise your wife could treat you with doubt for the rest of your life, right? So you say it out loud with intention and sincerity. And so that's one perfect method to develop your faith, right? To voice what you believe in. 闻是观世音菩萨，一心称念. And so the power of invocation, right, calls upon your attention to voice your faith in order to gain number 3, liberation. Okay? And so to go into the rest of the Universal Gate chapter, you will see whichever method, it's actually all surrounded by these 3 points. The power of hearing, either by you or by Avalokiteshvara. The second, the power of single-minded effort. Okay? 你一定要一心称念. Okay? And then in order to find liberation. So step 1, step 2, step 3. Okay? And now, going into how Guanyin or Avalokiteshvara comes to this world, right? We'll look at the 3rd chapter, right? And so starting from the 3rd chapter, this is pretty much a way by which Avalokiteshvara manifests in an intangible way. 名义，看不到的利益. Okay? So in other words, it's not like when you call out to Guanyin Bodhisattva, poof, he appears and say here, right? It doesn't really work that way. But we usually take what is about to come in a very literal way to see that's exactly how Guanyin saves us. For example, if you look at paragraph 3, if anyone who upholds the name of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva were to fall into a great fire, the fire will be unable to burn that person due to the Bodhisattva's all-inspiring spiritual powers. Right? A very, very nice opening to start with how exactly does Guanyin achieve universal deliverance. 若有持世观世音菩萨名者，射入大火，火不能烧，由是菩萨威神力故. Okay? So when you read this, what do you have in your mind? You will probably visualize yourself engulfed in fire, right? Or when your house catches on fire. So this is the moment when you say, Guanyin菩萨, come and help me, right? And so to take it literally, this is what you see. But to take it on a deeper level, you might discover that Guanyin Bodhisattva doesn't wait until there is a fire to come to help you, right? He is always by your side. Okay? So by that, the fire becomes what? The fire actually becomes the metaphor of this hatred and anger. Right? So you see that more clearly, you might discover every day we are engulfed in the fire of hatred or anger. Okay? And so why do we then need to say uphold his name? Right? So the very idea of upholding his name, first of all, even before he comes to you, you have to make sure that you are already establishing a good bond. Right? If you don't believe in Guanyin, when you call out to Guanyin, right, you're going to be disappointed. Okay? So you might have heard of the story of a very rich man who experienced a severe flood that flooded everything except for the roof of his house. So he was forced to escape to the roof, and then he started to call out to Guanyin. He says, oh, Guanyin Bodhisattva, I pray to you every day. I'm a very pious devotee. I'm in trouble now, so you should come and help me now. Right? And so as he calls out, he was hoping that Guanyin Bodhisattva will appear like the goddess, right? Poof. And then carry him in his hand and then take him away. But Guanyin never came. Except a helicopter came, right? This pilot who drove a helicopter and said, okay, I need to, hop on. We have to take you away because the water is actually rising. And so the man goes, no, I don't want you. I want Guanyin to come save me, right? I want Guanyin to come save me because I know Guanyin will appear in that very beautiful appearance. So go away. Guanyin will come to me, right? And so helicopter goes away, and then the water continues to rise. So the man gets even more nervous and says, okay, Guanyin, you have to come help me. I'm in dear need of your help, right? And so water goes up to his throat, and he says, Guanyin, help me. Guanyin, help me. Then came a man in a yacht, right? Yachting, right? A yacht with a motor and says, oh, hopping, I can take you to safety. Then the man still refused and say, no, you don't look like Guanyin, right? Guanyin doesn't really drive a boat, right? I don't want you to save me. So go away, I want Guanyin to save me. Okay? So the man in the yacht had no choice but to drive away. And then as the water came above to his nose, he was barely able to breathe, right? He made one final call out to Guanyin and says, Guanyin, come and help me, right? Then came a man rowing a boat, right? Says, okay, this is your last chance, hopping so I can save you. Okay? But the man was quite stubborn. He says, no, you don't look like Guanyin either. You look too poor, you look too ragged, right? I want my elegant goddess to come and save me, so go away. Okay? So as a result, the man rowed away and he drowned. Right? And in his afterlife, he, being a very pious Guanyin, was able to meet Guanyin. So the first thing upon meeting Guanyin was to complain, right? Something similar, something we do every day. Hey, Guanyin, how can you desert me? Right? How come you didn't come to save me? And then Guanyin says, oh, you misunderstood me totally. I came to save you 3 times, but each time you refused. Right? No, I didn't see you anywhere. All I saw was a pilot, right? And a yacht driver and a boat rower. You never came. So Guanyin says, yes, all 3 were me. Right? I came in the best way possible to help you. But you were too stubborn because you insisted on your own image of me. So that's why I wasn't able to save you. So if you don't believe in me, the fact that I can manifest in any form to save you, then I cannot save you. Okay? So in that invocation, we have that Hsing 称名, 好,持念观世音菩萨圣号, right? That idea is for your voice, your mind, and your action to become one in unity, to show that uninterrupted devotion to Guanyin. But when you don't, you will discover that where the problem arises is actually our mind. So on the surface, fire may look like an external calamity. But in reality, what we want to see is that the 7 calamities that show in this chapter, fire, water, right, bandits, right, knives, yakshas, and so on, they are all a result of the mind. It's the mind that creates these 7 calamities. Okay, so take fire, for example. Right? Fire comes from a moment when you come across something you don't like. Right? When you don't like something, when the world doesn't happen according to your will, you start to ignite the fire of anger. Why am I so unlucky? Right? Why am I so misfortunate? How come I never get what I want? And so this attachment to the self-belief that the world should happen in a particular way becomes a chance for us to really ignite the fire. Okay? And so what happens is, by single-mindedly chanting Guanyin's name, right? What happens is when you're angry, by chanting Guanyin菩萨, okay, next time when you're angry, you should give it a try. If you're about to hit somebody, if you're about to say a bad word, if you're about to hurt somebody, you say, Guanyin菩萨, right? You might discover that suddenly the image of Guanyin Bodhisattva appears in front of you. That kind, compassionate Guanyin who says, yes, I feel for you. I feel for your pain, right? So one way to remedy anger is with compassion. A kind of compassion that understands that other people are suffering too. So remember, when you wake up every morning with a hard battle you're about to face, remember that everyone around you also has their own battle to fight. Everyone is in trouble. So no one is supposed to treat you nicely and well, right? 没有什么人理所当然应该要对我们好。好，我们都有自己的烦恼，自己的战争要打。And so once you realize that, you might see it's like a father who took his son to the airport. And on that day, since it was a very busy time, the ground staff was extremely rude to the father. He answered every question grumpily and with very rude words. Right? And all alone, the father still received his boarding pass very not kindly and still said thank you to the ground attendant. And so the son turns to his father and said, Dad, why aren't you angry? This man is so rude. So the dad turns to the son and says, just because he lost his manner doesn't mean I have to lose my cool, right? He can act rude, but I can choose to be kind and polite because this is the way I'm supposed to be. So first of all, understanding. Second of all, your own principle will help us put out the fire. And what is the second calamity? If anyone carried away by a flood were to call his name, that person would immediately reach a shallow place. Okay? So the metaphor of the water in this case is the opposite from the first one. The first one is our calamity of coming across something which we don't like, undesirable parts of life. But water becomes moments when we come across something which we love too much. Okay? When we have something that we love too much, we tend to cling onto it. We are again drowning in our desires to become attached to what we love. Okay? And so moment will arise when the moment you see that you're not able to cling onto what you love, the calamity of water washes your senses away. Right? It washes your cool away. So water symbolizes greed and desire. Okay. Now the third one, if there are living beings in the hundreds of millions of billions who go out to sea in search of treasures such as gold, silver, lapis lazuli, mother of pearl, and so on, and if a fierce storm were to blow their ship off course, to make landfall in the territory of yakshas. And further, if among them there's even one person who calls the name of Avalokiteshvara, then all will be liberated from the torment of the rakshas. Okay? Quite interestingly, we go from hatred to greed, and finally it becomes the wind that blows us into an undesirable world. 飘堕罗刹鬼国. Okay? But this is an interesting metaphor. It's the image of us going into sea to search for some kind of treasure. Right? Do we do the same? Right? In our goal of life, we also enter the sea of samsara, trying to look for what? Treasures of liberation. Right? So to reach the other goal. So we too are the same. Right? We try to cling on to what we like, and we look for the treasures that can help us grow spiritually. So when you're looking at the gold, the silver, right, the pearl, the coral, the amber, what do they represent? They represent the 7 most important spiritual wealth that you can ever own. Right? To remain in a peaceful and well and aware state, these 7 treasures are, first of all, the treasure of faith, 七圣财. 第一个是信财. How do we actually give rise to faith as to what we believe in? And the second is the treasure of diligence, 精进. Once you believe in something, you diligently work towards your goal. And then 戒, discipline. You remain disciplined against all temptations in your progress towards your goal. Right? So going from faith, diligence, discipline to hearing. Hearing for the Dharma, hearing for the truth, right? And after hearing the truth, the 5th treasure you get is equanimity, 舍财, the treasure of equanimity, which already allows you to enter the state of prajna, allows you to see that you treat everything indifferently, right? 有跟空, existence and non-existence, good and bad, men and women, they are all conditional existences. Therefore, we treat them the same. So this is what we mean by the mind of equanimity. Equa, equality, nimity, mind, an equal mind. Okay? And then the 6th will be the treasure of wisdom. Right? This wisdom that allows you to stop discriminating or to marking all dharmas. And then finally, shame. Okay? The treasure of shame is extremely important because as ordinary beings, when we live in this world, despite the fact that we try to progress spiritually, sometimes we will be tainted by our afflictions, right? And being tainted by the afflictions, it brings us to really go against the righteous action and we might do something wrong. But the difference between a practicing Buddhist to a non-Buddhist is the fact that when you do something wrong, a non-Buddhist feels no shame, right? How do you feel when a boy kills a bird happily and not feel any sense of remorse? Compared to a boy who accidentally steps on a frog and begins to cry, thinking that I have done something really bad. Okay? So we enter the ocean of life and death in search of these 7 treasures: faith, diligence, discipline, hearing of the Dharma, equanimity, wisdom, and shame, right, in order to reach the far shore. But unfortunately, as we travel on that boat, right, this boat consists of the body of the boat and also the oar that you use to row, right? So you could say the boat is actually your mind, right? While the oar is actually what we call form. So the idea is that when your mind working in together with how it actually perceives the world, it will affect how you act. Okay, say for example, for you in Singapore and Malaysia, what happens when you see durians? You're happy, right? You're all smiling, right? I have a Venerable from New York. Her name is Venerable Zhiyue, who has come to give talks. She has developed this unexplainable phobia in durians, right? So whenever I say durian, she would go, no, right? So that fear and your smile becomes really large contradictions, right? Depending on how your mind perceives of the world. Therefore, your action will differ differently, okay? So the wind becomes ignorance. So when the wind blows across this boat, right? If it's ignorance, it will take your boat off track. When your boat is traveling off track, everything you do, everything you say is wrong, right? And so that's why the wind representing ignorance and delusion would be what confuses us in terms of our mind and our mentalities when we interact with the world. Okay? And so what happens is, as a result, it becomes an extreme danger for you to fall into the world of the rakshas and the yakshas. Okay? So let's say when you're lost, chant or call out to Guanyin so that Guanyin will take you back on track. Okay? To make sure that your boat, the boat of your body and mind and the perception are traveling in the proper direction towards your treasure and your goal. And the next thing will be the knives and the clubs, right? Where it says, or if someone facing imminent attack calls the name of Avalokiteshvara, the knives and clubs held by the attackers will then break into pieces, and that person will attain liberation. Okay? So every day we attack other people with our knife and club. That is our arrogance and our jealousy. Our need to think of ourselves as better than somebody becomes that knife that stabs into somebody even when they are doing better than you. Or when our clubs of jealousy is being raised into the air, it feels like we can't really accept the fact that others are doing better, right? And so in this case, you will see calling out to Guanyin, again, awakens the kindness in you to feel that, yes, we should learn to rejoice and feel for others. Okay? Once there was a woman who married into a family, and her mother-in-law did not treat her well. She wanted to make sure that she did the housework and treated her family well and fulfilled her duty in every way possible. So this young woman did her best to fulfill her duties. Okay? And as she was able to do everything and have spare time, she was a pious Buddhist who then used her spare time to visit the temples to chant and to volunteer her work. Okay? But in seeing her daughter-in-law spending time outside of the family, it made the mother-in-law very unhappy. Right? So she decided to punish her. Okay? One day, the daughter-in-law was out in the temple until dark, so she would come home pretty late. So the mother thought, this is a good time for me to punish her, to scare her away from ever wanting to go to the temple again. Okay? So her method was, she found the mask of a very hideous ghost, right? And she found a cape. She wanted to make sure that when her daughter comes back home through the dark streets, she's going to jump out, scare her, so that she would be very, very afraid of leaving her house ever after. Okay? So as the sun set, Sky got dark. The mother-in-law put on the mask and put on the cape and hid behind the lamppost and waited for her daughter, right? When her daughter walked past her, she jumped out in front of her and screamed really loudly, "Rah!" Right? But being a very pious practitioner of Guanyin Bodhisattva, the daughter did not feel scared at all. Instead, she joined her palms and said, "Oh, you poor thing. You must have done something very bad in order to be reborn with such a ugly face. I feel sad for you." Right? 你好可怜哦，你一定是做了什么坏事才会往生为这么丑陋的恶鬼。好，让我为你念佛。Let me chant for you so you can be reborn in a better place. Okay? And then the mother didn't know what to do, right? She didn't know how to respond to the daughter's compassion, so she ran away. And she had to make sure that she got home before the daughter arrived, right? So she rushed home, she was all sweaty, and then she made sure that she wanted to take off the mask and pretend she was doing nothing at home. Okay? Unfortunately, the mask got stuck on her face. She couldn't take it off. No matter how hard she pulled at the mask, it just stayed. Okay? Which meant that when the daughter comes home, she's going to find out it's the mother who was playing the trick, right? Yeah. So it happened that way. She wasn't able to take it off. The daughter comes home and sees her mother-in-law wearing that same mask. Okay? And at that moment, she felt ashamed instead of angry. She says, "Oh, I feel very bad for making my mom angry." How, 学佛如果是让家人不欢喜的话，那学佛是没有用的。If I learn the Dharma only to make my family unhappy, then I'm not doing it the right way. Right? So she apologized to her mother-in-law and says, "Mom, I'm so sorry to put you in a very awkward position." Okay? And then, having said that, it actually made the mother-in-law ashamed of herself. Right? So she joined her palms and she chanted, 观世音菩萨，我很抱歉。Okay? As soon as she chanted 观世音菩萨, what happened? The mask fell off, right? So we will see in the story, the power of compassion can break somebody's anger and jealousy in that exact same way, right? When you don't respond with arrogance, when you respond with kindness and understanding, you calm them down, you break their arrogance. So 刀循断断坏, that's where it actually comes from. Okay? So 4 calamities. But unfortunately, we have come close to the end of today's session, so I'll quickly go through number 5 to number 7. Okay? And so at the bottom of the page 1, it says, if a great 3,000-fold world system was full of yakshas and rakshas seeking to torment people, okay, 夜叉罗上, and heard someone call Guanyin Bodhisattva, these evil demons will not even be able to see that person with their evil eyes, much less do any harm. Okay? So the metaphor of the yaksha and the raksha over here can be referred to as the temptations, right? The temptations that makes us lose our Ishvara, right? Money, sensual desires, fame and gain. That kind of gives us a moment of rationalization to say, hey, what I'm doing is not so bad. Okay? So during the World War times in China, a lot of people were forced to flee their homelands. And in the process, many actually had to starve because they weren't able to find any food. Okay? So one day, this young man was fortunate enough to come across an orchard that had a lot of oranges and fruits. So his company was very happy. His friend, he says, wow, we're in luck today. Right? We can eat off the fruits. Okay? But the young man says, wait, hold on. Before you take anything, we should ask the owner. Right? And his friend said, are you crazy? This is war. Right? I'm sure the owner would have fled already, so don't even bother. Right? The orchid is without an owner, so just eat it. But the young man quietly turns to the man. He says, no, the orchid may be without an owner, but my heart, I am still the owner of my heart. I know what is right and wrong. Okay? So chanting Guanyin Bodhisattva's name will, of course, calm you down and cool you down from the temptations in your face and allow you to reconsider what is the proper thing to do. Okay? Single-mindedly chanting Avalokiteshvara's name for compassion and equality. So you, again and again, when you call out to somebody, it seems like you have a very good mentor, right? A very good role model who lies in front of you, who is able to help you think in a more clear and a proper way. So the rakshas and the yakshas, the temptations, you may chant to Guanyin to help get rid of them. And now the next one on page 2. If someone, whether guilty or not guilty, who is bound and fettered with manacles, shackles, and kange, calls the name of Avalokiteshvara, then all bonds will be broken. Okay. And so now we are looking at the shackles, right? Actually in Chinese, 纽戒枷锁, we have 4 things, right? 纽 is actually the handcuffs, right? The manacles. And what about the shackles? The shackles are the ones that are tied, locked around your ankles, right? And the kange is actually what is put around your head, right? To stop you from moving around. So you might imagine what in your life actually locks you down and shackles you to that extent. Okay. We call them, again, different temptations: fame, gain, and love. And therefore, in other words, every day we think about what we want, right? And these things that we want and our expectations becomes what shackles us to life, that we are not able to think from a new perspective. Okay. Once there was a mom who came home to find her daughter having 2 apples in her hand, right? So this time the mom wants to see if the little girl has a generous heart. So she asked her, "Hey, would you like to share?" So immediately upon hearing the mom saying the word share, the little girl lifted both apples and took a bite of each quickly. Right? Yeah. And so the mom was very, very disappointed. Right? She thought it was time to teach her daughter a lesson of generosity. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen and bodhisattvas, if your daughter did that when you asked her to share, what would your reaction be? Sometimes Chinese parents, right? Or Western parents, no, right? We would tend to have an action ready to punish, right? Or to scold the girl, okay? But this time the mother decided that she was going to give the little girl a chance. So instead of calling out to her to say that she did something wrong, she asked her a question. Okay, why did you do that? Okay. And then the little girl says, she lifted one of the apples and says, "Mom, this one is sweeter. Here, take it." Right? So all along the girl was only wanting to make sure that the mother gets the better apple. Right? But the shackles of our expectations and our predispositions tend to put us in a position thinking that the girl was greedy, is selfish. Okay? And so again, chanting that Guanyin Bodhisattva, it gives you that sense of empathy to let go of these expectations for fame, gain, or love, right? And to kind of return to zero and say, okay, right, what would Guanyin Bodhisattva do if I were in the situation? And the final one, the brigands, right? Here it says in the 2nd chapter, the 2nd paragraph of page 2, if a great 3,000-fold world system were full of malevolent brigands, and a merchant chief were leading many merchants carrying valuable treasures along a perilous road, and among them one man to speak up and say, "Good man, don't be afraid. You should call the name Avalokiteshvara with single-minded effort. For this bodhisattva can bestow fearlessness upon living beings. If you call his name, you will surely be liberated from these malevolent brigands." Okay. So who are these? Okay. So you might imagine a group of travelers going into the mountain. And now the metaphor of the mountain would be the 5 Skandhas, which is the mountain of your predisposed self. Right? This is what I look like, the heap of form, perception, volition, mental formation, and consciousness. And who are the bandits? Okay. The bandits, again, will be your mind that continues to disrupt you from thinking with clarity. So in other words, when your mind is all stirred up with your afflictions, you won't be able to think clearly. You're going to be fearful. Okay. So I heard the story from a young man called Valentin from Sao Paulo. He said he first went to our Rulai temple and met our chief abbess, Venerable Juecheng. Okay? And upon the moment he met her, she gave him this particular task. He says, you want to learn about Buddhism? Next week, you come into the slum next to the temple with me. And those who lived in the slums were drug traffickers, right? People with guns, right? Children who don't go to school, and so on. So immediately upon hearing this, Valentin became very afraid. He says, Venerable, why are you taking me through danger? Right? What if they shoot me? What if somebody robs me? Right? He became very, very afraid. But on the day they actually entered the area, he found very surprisingly the peace and the calm and composure demonstrated by Venerable Juecheng, walking past through a group of bandits, right? Drug traffickers. Or the only thing Venerable Juecheng did was, hello, how are you? Hi. She treated these people as if they were their friends, while Valentin remained very fearful all alone, thinking that somebody could just jump out from the alley and attack him, right? And so at the end of the day, having finally traveled through the slum area, handing out candies and resources, supplies to the villagers, Valentin turned to Venerable Abbess Juecheng and asked the question, why weren't you afraid? Right? Why weren't you afraid of being robbed or attacked? Right? And so the abbess turned to Valentin and says, this is what Chan is about. Do you know what Chan is? Chan is to eat when you're supposed to eat, walk when you're supposed to walk, right? Smile when you're supposed to smile, and think nothing else. Yeah. And therefore, in that, I feel that I saw this great impartial compassion by the Venerable Juecheng to see that she went in there to meet new friends. She wasn't going in there to meet a group of thieves, right? Or drug traffickers, or anyone who is inclined to do something bad. And so Valentin says he had never been so ashamed of himself. As a Brazilian, he was more afraid of his fellow Brazilians than Abbess Juecheng. Yeah. So we will see in this case, right, his whole mind was being stolen by the thieves of preconceptions. And therefore, chanting the name of Guanyin will actually break us free from all of this. Okay. So summing up the 7 calamities, right, we see this third paragraph on page 2, where it says, Akshayamati, lofty indeed are the awe-inspiring spiritual powers of the great Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. Okay. And so by saying this, first of all, we see great Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. In Sanskrit, it becomes Mahasava Bodhisattva. Okay. So why do we refer to Avalokiteshvara this way? After hearing how he helps us resolve the external calamities that arise for us to refine or rediscover our compassion, the Bodhisattva who is enlightened is also a Mahasava, whose heart is large enough, as high as a mountain, to help all of us overcome our fears and suffering. Okay? So that is why now, if you go back to the Heart Sutra, to see that how it begins with, when Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva was coursing through the deep Prajna Paramita, he saw that the 5 skandhas were empty, thus he overcame all ills and suffering. 观自在菩萨行深般若波罗蜜多时，照见五蕴皆空，度一切苦厄. Okay. So by seeing the 5 skandhas as empty, we see a display of Avalokiteshvara's attainment, the Mahasava of wisdom, right? To see that we are in fact all empty. And finally, he overcame all ills and suffering. 度一切苦厄 becomes the completion of the Bodhisattva path to help all living beings overcome their suffering with their wisdom. Okay. Just to share a little secret with you, in the Chinese sutra, you see 照见五蕴皆空，度一切苦厄. But if you go back to the Sanskrit original, there's one missing line. Okay. In the Sanskrit original, 度一切苦厄, to overcome all ills and suffering, doesn't exist. Okay. So we wondered why in the Chinese later on, Master Xuanzang actually added that 度一切苦厄 in his Chinese translation. So we came to realize that it's his portrayal of Guanyin Bodhisattva's completion of both wisdom and compassion, right? Who's able to either remain in the seat of compassion or rise from the seat of compassion, emptiness, to show he has both in order to help all living beings. Therefore, the completion of the Mahayana path. 悲智双运，智他两利. Okay? And so today we have come close to the first session. Okay? We have deliberately made sure that we actually give 2 consecutive nights to make sure we can cover the details. So today I'm just going to stop at the 7 calamities. 我们今天就讲到7难，还有3毒，还有33化身。Okay, so tomorrow we will continue with the 3 poisons as well as the 33 manifestations. For us to see how Guanyin Bodhisattva appears in front of us in a much more tangible way. Okay, I hope you have enjoyed tonight's talk, and I would also like to invite you to end tonight's session by reading through a prayer to Guanyin Bodhisattva with all of us. Okay, so please remain seated. And please kindly join your palms and refer to the prayer on the screen. Okay. So thank you for listening to the Universal Gate chapter. May you end the day with the compassion and the wisdom of Avalokiteshvara. Let's read together. A prayer to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva by Venerable Master Hsing, the founder of Foguang Shan. O great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, please relieve the distressed and the suffering. Please listen compassionately to your disciple, confess, and repent. Since I have come to know human affairs, I always feel that life is not peaceful. I often feel that circumstances are not agreeable. Towards relatives and good friends, I am not considerate or helpful enough. Towards society and the masses, I lack skillful means to bring harmony to all people. O great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, whenever I look up at your compassionate image, my mind indeed feels pure and at ease. Whenever I chant your name, my spirit indeed feels comfortable, and I myself feel free from worldly worries. Facing you, who are dignified and immaculate, I feel so ashamed. In comparison to your sprinkling sweet dew all over, to universally benefit human beings and devas, you are like an ocean. I am like well water. You're like the sun and the moon. I'm like a firefly. You're like mountains. I'm like a molehill. You're like a lion king. I am like a small mouse. O great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, over many kalpas, you have worked diligently in of hardships, and still want to return to the world to liberate all sentient beings. You have done what is difficult for people to do, and still want to follow the world's cries to relieve its suffering. Who am I? Why can I not do the same? O great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, I pray to you to guide me with your universal vows. I pray to you to enlighten me with your compassionate vows. May I have your fearless penetration of the nature of all things through wisdom. If I face people of vices, they will be transformed. If I face villains, their anger will be cooled. If I face evil, the evil mind will be brought under control. If I face the ignorant, they will obtain great wisdom. O great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, I pray to you to shelter me in your compassionate cloud. I would like to learn your spirit of benefiting and relieving all beings, to observe the needs of all beings through compassionate eyes, to listen to the suffering of all beings with attentive ears, to comfort the vexations and anxiety of all beings without wonderful words, to soothe the wounds of all beings with both hands. O great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, I pray to you to illuminate us with your light of wisdom. I will assist all beings through joyous giving. I will convert and guide the stubborn into the truth by cooperating with and adapting to them. I will provide people with convenience through beneficial conduct. I will help people to be happy through loving words. O great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, I would like to take your liberation and ease as a role model. From now on, I will distance myself from contrary and delusive ideas to contemplate the ease of the individual. I will distance myself from discrimination and personal conjecture to contemplate the ease of circumstances. I will distance myself from attachment and entanglement to contemplate the ease of affairs. I will distance myself from the 5 desires and the trouble of the world to contemplate the ease of the mind. O great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, please accept my sincerest prayer. O great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, please accept my sincerest prayer. Blessed be Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, and thank you for listening to part 1 of the talk. All of the commentaries I have provided today is actually based on this book by Venerable Master Hsing, The Universal Gate, translated into English. And so I hope I've sparked your interest to read this in further detail. And if you're interested, feel free to go back to the back of the room to acquire a copy at your will. And I've also brought forth a gift of Dharma to those who are learning Buddhism in Chinese and English. It's called the Glossary of Humanistic Buddhism, where we collected the most contemporary use of Buddhist terms and translated them into English. Okay, so these are for free. So if you feel like one, please take a copy from the back. You can use it for your own purposes. So once again, thank you very much for listening. I hope to see you again tomorrow. May Guanyin Bodhisattva be with you.
Please rise. Join palms. Bow. 谢谢师父。